Hey everybody, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's bonus episode where I actually put myself in the hot seat and I get interviewed by one of our co-hosts, Jenny Blake. I wanted to remind you all real quick, head over to iTunes and Stitcher, give us a 5-star review so that we can work our way up in the rankings. I really appreciate each and every one of you listening, and I really hope that you all are gaining some value out of this. In the spirit of getting value, don't be afraid to let us know what more you want to hear. You know, we kind of jump around the map. We have endurance athletes, we have strength athletes. If you guys want to hear something in particular, don't be afraid to let us know. Shoot me an email, rick@LuaVíve.com. Thanks, and now on to the show.
Hey guys, welcome back to Lionheart Radio. This is Jenny Blake, one of the co-hosts here, and I am a nutrition coach based out of San Diego, and today I have Rick here in San Diego, and we're going to change it up a little bit and put him on the hot seat. So, as you know, Rick is the main host here at Lionheart Radio. He started LuaVíve, the supplement company, which has multiple components under it now. He's competed in Strongman, CrossFit. Currently, he's doing a lot of ultra-endurance marathons. He's also active military right now. And I believe he also does personal training and programming, too. So, hey, Rick, what's going on?
So, I don't know if I say thanks for having me, but thanks for having me.
No problem. Anytime.
My own studio, on my own show. It's perfect.
So, what I just listed was a lot. So, all of these accomplishments didn't happen overnight. So, can we kind of quick back up, and how did you get started in this industry and going down this path?
Like in the fitness industry, or like just like working out in general?
Let's just start with working out, because I'm sure that's what led you into the whole industry.
Yeah, so my mom obviously like started me playing sports when I was super young, like 2 years old or 4 years old. I was like in gymnastics.
Okay.
And I actually think that was a really good thing, which I think a lot of people could benefit from. They maybe you don't want to be a gymnast, or you don't want your kid to be a gymnast forever. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, or maybe you don't have an opinion on it. But just getting them in some level of movement like that at a really early age, like I think it legitimately really increased my proprioception and like just my ability to kind of maneuver my own body through time and space. And I even noticed it like when I would be playing in Little League for baseball, because like I would be so much more advanced than the other kids, not necessarily in hitting, but just in my ability to like be athletic.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I did gymnastics growing up, and I think it definitely not only got me into what I ended up doing for years, but body awareness is huge in just what that teaches you, how to control certain aspects of your body without even introducing another component like a baseball bat or something else that you have to control. Right. Definitely. And I've told people before, like, if I ever have kids, like, they're doing gymnastics. Like,
yeah, for sure. No, I think it's a good thing. And so, so that was like my very, very first start. And then throughout high school, I played football and lacrosse, went to... got a lacrosse scholarship, actually, and went to college before I didn't really know what I wanted to do in school, and ended up actually dropping out that first time and going into the military. But, you know, I always look back at high school, and for me, high school was kind of a shit show. I didn't really like my classes or whatever. I was kind of there for the social aspect, basically. Yep. And the classes were just something that I had to do. Mm-hmm. However, the one caveat is that in order to play sports, which meant a lot to me back then, you had to have good grades, and you know that's still the way it is. So. And
this was in Virginia?
No, this was in Maine. I grew up in Maine.
Yeah, gotcha.
But so the way my childhood worked is I cared a lot about sports, and I would do well enough in school until the teachers would be like, hey, you're going to get a D in this class, and you have to keep like a C or something, I think, to play sports. So I'd be like, oh, what do I have to do? And they'd be like, well, you would have to make up all of this coursework in just this weekend alone. And so I would go do it. Literally for no other reason than I wanted to play sports. So sports were definitely like my saving grace. They kept me on the straight and narrow. I probably had an affinity to like go out and like drink more or do whatever, but because of sports, it kept me in the right direction. And then going into the military, I chose a job that was very physical intensive. So, you know, the job that I chose has a very very high attrition rate, like 73% of my class quit. And it's academic, but it's mostly physical. So essentially, like up until this point in my life, everywhere I've gotten in life was because of my just ability to like persevere and do these just a physical component, right? So that's kind of like how I got going in sports. And then once I got in the military, kind of used that physicality to get me to where I'm at now. Then it got to a point where I'm like, I was missing the sports and all that stuff. So then
the competitiveness of it.
Yeah, and so that's when I found CrossFit. It was like the first time I walked into a CrossFit gym, I felt like I was playing a sport again.
Right.
I was like taping my wrists, like in lacrosse and training, and there were competitions, and there's a whole thing behind Olympic weightlifting, which I didn't know. So,
how old were you when you found that?
23.
Okay, 24? And I feel like that's the age that most people find CrossFit too. It's like right after that college age, or you're like missing something and you keep searching, and then you find CrossFit, because it is competitive and it's something that you can continually get better at, and it's tracked and measured and all that. So you got into CrossFit first. Okay.
And so the gymnastics part of CrossFit, which is like not a lot, but I was actually pretty good at, which was like the body weight stuff,
because when you were 2 you were muscle memory. right
something like that. But you know what I always hated? I always thought, like, damn, how much better could I have been if I didn't spend, all the high school years doing, like, bis and tris on Monday, or whatever, bench on Monday and bis and tris. And, like, if I would have actually been Olympic weightlifting. Because that's the thing is, when you're trying to learn Olympic weightlifting, I always tell people it's like powerlifting and golf at the same time. You have to be strong, and it's a lot of technique. And if you get frustrated and you try to force it, you're going to do worse. So, like, I always looked at, like, these Eastern Bloc countries, like Russia or whatever, where they grow up do Olympic weightlifting really early. And so that motor pattern is so ingrained in them that, once they get older and they start developing, muscle mass, they get a lot stronger, a lot faster. Whereas us, I found it at 23, I'm trying to learn how to clean while also trying to get stronger at the clean.
Right. And when you're young, doing these 3 movements isn't as appealing as, running and chasing, like, football or soccer. That's a little more popular. So,
and that was the other thing about CrossFit, though, is it's constantly varied, right? So for me, that was important because I just have ADD like a motherfucker. So I would just get so bored, like, working out. I love working out, but I would still get bored with the same routine. So it was always like reading different magazines, trying different things, and that's one of the things that I think CrossFit does really well is there's so many different aspects and facets to it that it really took me like 7 years to get bored with it. Really.
Gotcha. So that's what I was going to ask. Did you end up getting bored and that's what introduced you to Strongman, or?
No, I actually just really started loving the strength aspect of it. And
Gotcha.
So then I just started pursuing Strongman. And that's kind of been my whole life. It's like if I find something that I like, I literally will just pull that thread until I realize, hey, I love this, or I don't really want to do this anymore, but at least I know. You know what I mean?
Right. Did you find that you were better at that aspect, and maybe that's why it was more enjoyable and you wanted to do it more, or?
The Strongman?
Yeah, or was it you wanted to just get better at it?
No, not really, because I was better at, like, the endurance stuff
going
into that. Yeah, I did a lot of...
full circle.
Yeah, I know, right? I did a lot of triathlons and stuff when I was early in the military, like a lot of triathlons.
Okay.
No, I definitely wasn't naturally, like, one of those strong people, and I was always jealous of the people that were. I think in high school, I literally benched, like, I don't know if it was 135. Like,
oh, wow.
Maybe it was 135. Yeah.
Okay.
But no, it was just, I literally just really enjoyed it, and so I dove it full on in like I tend to do with everything.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
So you competed then?
In what?
In Strongman.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't nationally ranked. I competed in like 4 or 5 different competitions, and I podiumed most of them to like a 4th in one of them. Yeah. But I didn't get terribly strong. I was like weighed like at 205. I had a 585 deadlift. So it's like decent for like if it were CrossFit, it would be decent.
Yeah.
For Strongman, not great.
And those guys are huge, right? Or are there weight classes?
Yeah, they're huge. Lightweight is like 232 and under for men.
Oh, wow.
So the goal is to be like 230 pounds or even like walk around at like 240, or
so are you just crushing food all day?
I got super fat and it was awesome. I just ate like everything and lifted everything, and that was like the life. And I really did like it. However, I found that like for me, it created a huge limited my ability in other parts of life super hard, and that I didn't like.
Like being uncomfortable because you're so...
Yeah, like tying my shoes sucked, but like bench was awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that shit just got old for me.
Gotcha. And so then you like made a complete 180 into the endurance running.
Yep.
Did it start off with marathons or half marathons and just keep creeping up, or
Nope.
how did that even come about?
So like I told you, I was kind of in endurance, earlier in my life.
Yeah.
And so I had read Ultramarathon Man, which was like a book by Dean Karnazes. He's actually coming on the show in a couple months. But,
oh, nice.
Yeah. So I read that book, loved it, and that's kind of like what started me down the endurance road, and then, fast forward military, whatever. So I got home from deployment, and I had been home for like a week, and I was definitely as strong as I'd ever been. Like after 9 months in Africa, you don't have a lot to do, so just like lift 2-3 times a day almost. And I was in good shape as far as that was concerned, but I tried to go for a jog one night, and I literally couldn't run more than a mile. It was like 3/4 of a mile, and my calves were cramping up, and I was like falling apart. And I'm like, the inability just pissed me off so bad that I think I finished like a 2 or 3 mile run maybe, and like stopped 3 or 4 times to stretch.
Just dying.
Yep. And I grabbed my phone, I went online, and I found like 3 50-milers, and they were all full. So I like wrote to the race director, and they wouldn't let me in. They were like, "No, dude, you got to sign up."
You're not special.
Yeah, I tried to be like,
just
hey,
because you're fat, you're not special.
I tried to be like, hey, I'm in the military. I got home from deployment. They're like, yeah, dude, like. Just,
you and a bunch of other dudes.
Right.
All right.
So I finally found one, which is a small one called the Table Rock Ultras in North Carolina. And it was 6 weeks away. So I signed up, and then I trained like as much as I could. I actually kind of devised a system to train. Like I trained smartly because I knew with the amount of weight on my body, like if I just went full into running, I was gonna get shin splints and stuff.
Yep.
But I found out like, okay, if it's 50 miles, I'm going to need to be able to move for 12 hours at least, right? So the way that I did it is I found biking was a 3-to-1. That's what they say. So if you bike 3 miles, it's equivalent to running 1 mile. Okay. That's just a rough bullshit thing I found online.
Going with it? Okay.
Yeah, but I used that to, get my endurance way up. Mm-hmm. And so then I figured, day of, if I like break my legs or get stress fractures, I can grit it out. I just can't get them beforehand because then I'll be screwed. So that's what I did. I used a whole bunch of alternative cardio in order to get my cardio up, and I signed up and I did it.
So how old were you then when you signed up for that first ultra?
So I was 26.
26. Okay, so you started CrossFit about 23.
Yep.
For a handful of years.
Yeah,
and
3 years of I did like a year of CrossFit and then 2 years of hard strongman. Then did that ultra. Then got back into CrossFit, which is when we met when I was here. Okay. Yeah. So I did CrossFit for a while longer.
Here in San Diego.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then now back into the ultra stuff.
Nice. Full circle. So competing in all of these different types, they're very different. Mm-hmm. There's got to be something in common in each of them that you really like, and that's why you keep circling to all of them.
Well, I don't think that there's anything in common necessarily between strength and endurance other than the fact that you're moving, and I just tend to think better when I'm moving. Gotcha. That's just something I know about myself. So even when I'm for the business, or for the podcast, when I'm doing show notes, I walk. I open up the notes on my phone, and I will literally be listening to an audiobook and just walking and taking notes. And that's if I have to take phone calls, that's what I do. I just tend to literally process information better when I'm moving. Yeah. And so I've always just been drawn to movement.
Gotcha. Yeah, because not anybody or everybody can do Strongman or CrossFit, but I would say it's a lot easier to get into because it's one or two moves, less than an hour. Yeah. But endurance running, like you said, 12 plus hours you're running, and people do not want to do that simply because of the mental game, right? It's way more I gotta do what for 12 hours? So how do you, and that's just the game day, right? Training for that is I don't even know how many hours. So how do you stay so mentally strong? What do you think about
for the endurance stuff?
Yeah.
You mean specifically?
Yes.
Well, I think that I've tried to, I've put so much thought into why I do these, and I'm always looking for other people's answers. What is it that drives people? Mm-hmm. And I think what I came up with is weird, but I'll just go with it anyway. So I like the person that I am on the other side of these events.
Okay.
Even training. So right now I've got a 200 miler coming up, and I gave myself so long to train for it that it hasn't been good. Like, it's too long. I'm not focused enough, and I'm not where I want to be training wise. But like for the event specifically, this is how it goes. So when I start around between 25 and 30 miles, I'll get the first wave of pain, which is like not muscular pain, but like bone pain. Like, oh fuck, this hurts. Or just from
that's a marathon. So you've completed a marathon, and that's when you start the pain.
That's right. That's where it starts hurting.
Just making sure I heard that right.
Well, because you're running slower than if you're running a marathon.
Yeah. Okay.
When I run a marathon, the pain starts like mile 16.
Okay. All right,
but for these, so it starts hurting. I know it's going to go away though, for sure. It always does. And that's just something you got to figure out about yourself, right? And that's something I value too. Like, I like to know the kind of person I am when stuff gets really bad. And these races, they will show you that. And so the pain will go away, and then it'll come back again, like maybe who knows when, like 10 miles later or whatever. But it'll go away again. But it'll be, every time it comes back, it gets a little bit worse. And I know there's like 2 or 3 waves of that. Well, by like the 3rd wave, the pain will come back, and I'll keep on running. And the thing is, so mentally, I know this pain is, if I would tell myself like, oh, if it's just pain, I'll be fine, because pain will go away. And I have some mental checklists and some things that I do mentally to like get my mind away from that pain when it really hits hard.
That's what I was going to say. Are you constantly just thinking about the pain, or what else do you...
Oh, it's a mental checklist.
What is that checklist that you do?
So I'm like, the first thing I start with is my head. So if your head is tilted up or down too far, which you tend to do when you're really tired, you'll start losing torque, like power in your hips.
Okay.
So the first thing I do is I like check my chin, and then I check my hips. And then I always I essentially just work all the way down my body. I'm like, okay, are my knees under my hips? Are my feet under my knees? Am I hitting with a nice midfoot? And then I go back up to the head. Okay, head is neutral, and I go all the way down. And I'll go through this over and over and over.
So that's almost resembles like meditation or yoga aspect, where you, when it comes to the mind, right? Because you're training your mind to have a process and not think, oh, so how much longer do I have? Oh, I'm in such pain. Like, you've trained your mind to think a certain way. That kind of gets you in a rhythm and a routine.
Right.
Kind of like meditation.
Right. Because if you're looking for a reason to quit on these events, you'll find it.
Yep.
It's out there. Don't even, you can't even entertain it. Because if you want to quit, you'll find a reason. It fucking sucks. But so I go through that in my head over and over in order to let the pain, get through the pain. Okay, but after the pain goes for the 3rd or 4th time, you're the person that you are. It's like it strips all the exterior away. So we all carry around this exterior where we're I don't know, maybe some people don't, but for me it's you have this persona of yourself and you're kind of hard, right? For me it's I'm always telling people harden the fuck up, and that's just who I am. And it's not even something I mean to do, but after you go through 3 or 4 waves of hard pain, all of that gets ripped away from you. And so the person you are is this very raw, emotional kind of person. And it's weird because, I remember the first one I did, or the second one I did, Julie and Brendan were asking me how are you doing? And I couldn't even answer them because if I acknowledged how I was actually doing, I was just going to fall the fuck apart. I just knew it. I was going to break down. And at the same time, that comes with other esoteric kind of weird things, but you love harder. I remember in the last one, Julie got up at 4 a.m. with me, or not the last one, but one of the ones I did. Julie got up at 4 a.m. with me. She asked me how I was doing, and I was like, oh, I think I'm doing okay. But she could tell by my face, I was not doing okay. Yeah. And she got up and ran 10K with me, because it was a loop. I just kept going
I remember
around.
that.
Yeah. And I just remember how strongly I just felt about that. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but I the person I am.
During hard times is when emotions come out, or it's more down to your core. I mean, not to compare this to the movies, but that's how movies make you feel when there's rough times or there's war and things like that. It's kind of all the bullshit, all the external factors don't matter anymore. It's just down to the core. So, no, I think that totally makes sense. So, about what mile are we at now? So, that's probably, that happens about mile, I don't know.
Oh, that was probably
30.
No, that was probably 45.
45, okay,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's when it's by 50, you're kind of, it's a different world at that point.
Okay.
And that's the thing with these long races. The first 25 miles, you can't win a race in the first 25 miles, but you sure as shit can lose it. So, you know, I always tell myself, just don't be a hero. Just survive like 25 miles. Whatever speed you think you should go, slow down, you know, and that's a hard thing to do for people, but.
Do you pace? I mean, I'm guessing you pace yourself, but what do you use to track yourself? And
I used to run with a watch, like a Fitbit type thing
Yep.
that would just tell me my pace and stuff. And sometimes I do. If I'm doing a looped course, it's really good because paying attention to your cadence and the lap time, that's another place for your mind to go, which is good. Like you can really burn some hours doing that. But for the most part, I don't actually. I just go off feel.
Okay.
So I'll check in with a watch, like I'll have it on me. But I don't get too obsessed with it and I'm not going to win most of these. Like I've podiumed a couple times, but I'm not even really training to win. I just really like doing them, you know.
Okay. So you said mile 50, it's a whole nother world.
Mm-hmm.
What is that world?
Well, that's like I said, that's where you're like just really like raw emotionally and you're running off all like you're just a different person by then. Like you've gone through the pain and it's like stripped all of that exterior away, like I said. And, yeah, I don't know. You like love harder, and you like it. I honestly, other than ecstasy, I haven't really felt anything like it.
Okay.
Like it's a crazy thing. That's why I was saying, like when I first started thinking about like why do I like these, I'm like, that's too crazy. I can't say that shit out loud.
Well, that's what you got.
Yeah, but that's what it is. I think. Yeah, you're a different human.
Is that why
you do
them? You think? What's that drive? You know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's hard. And maybe one day I'm gonna, because people keep asking me, I keep upping the ante, and like the next one I'm doing is 205 miles around Lake Tahoe. And people are like, well, what the fuck do you do after that? Like, where do you go for that? And I'm like, well, I got some things. Like, I don't know.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a hard thing to like put the nose on, but like I said, like as long as I'm in motion, I'm happy. So I keep finding the next one, you know.
So does that go for your training too?
What do you mean?
Do you ever have those feelings when you're training, or is your mindset a little different when you're training? Like, you know, you're 5 months out and you're going for a run. Where are you mentally there?
Yeah, so 5 months is hard for me. Like I said, that's such a long period of time to train for one thing, especially if you're me and you're like shiny object syndrome all the time. It's like, oh, I want to do that. So, I don't know, that's really hard. 5 months, my mind's, you know, on a business or something else. But I don't know. I like the work. I don't mind the work. So, it's not really hard for me to get in the mindset of training. It's like, yeah, I kind of enjoy like being a little bit sore. I kind of enjoy feeling like I earned my meal that night, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So is your training, you know, pretty strict? Do you follow, you know, a plan every time, or do you go off of how you feel and you wake up and you're like, I feel good today, I'm going to go further, or, you know, today I know I beat myself up yesterday, I'm going to take it a little slower, or today I'm going to do strength, you know? How do you map it out?
I'll tell you, but it's not a model that I would say anybody should ever do.
Okay, all right.
But so I'll follow programs. I'll get through like a 12-week program or whatever for sure. I built this program called American Volume Training, and I'm running through that right now.
Okay.
But what was the question?
The question is, are you strict on your plan?
No,
or
okay,
are you
no, I'm not. No.
Go on how you feel.
Right. So what I do is I will do something for a week. I will like barely train at all, and I'll eat a whole bunch of shit food, and you know, I'll like watch TV late, and then I'll hate myself so much that for the next 2 weeks I'm just on it hardcore, and I'm getting up early and I'm training, and it kind of sucks, and I've tried to figure out a way to like not go through those highs and lows, but for whatever reason, like enough cheating just like puts me on the straight and narrow, because I like training, but we all get a little mentally burned out sometimes, which happens. But yeah, for me, it's like once I get to a point where, so it's all based on feel, like
Gotcha.
to answer your question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go through
a little mix of.
Yeah, it's a little mix. I'll
but
follow a template
feel.
for sure. But you know, when I was training with OPEX, the OPT model for CrossFit, I was training really hard, and I mean, it was like 4 to 6 hours in the gym every single day, and anyone that's tried to get anywhere in CrossFit knows that that's really what it takes for most people. There's the people that it doesn't, but for me, it would have taken that.
Yep.
I just got so burnt out. Like even with CrossFit, which is constantly varied, I was like, after 6 months of that, I had like a slap tear in my shoulder, and I just was like unhappy. I'm like, I don't like this anymore.
So do you find that you're overtraining then, especially at that time, but do you still find yourself kind of overtraining and maybe pushing yourself a little too hard?
Yeah, that's like the great battle for me. It's like I love the volume, and so it's like, this is how I tell people, what you should do, if you have 5 hours to work out, let's say you work out 5 hours in a week, you would ideally do an hour a day.
Right.
For me, I'll do nothing on Monday, I'll do nothing on Tuesday. I'll train for 5 straight hours on Wednesday, and then I'll be too broken on Thursday and Friday. So I love the volume. So like that's the thing with me is just trying to figure it out. And you know what I've been doing lately is I've cut all my workouts into super short periods. So I did this thing, the 4-4-48, which I heard Jesse Itzler talking about it on a podcast. But you basically run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours, and actually like. The volume was fine for me. It didn't hurt. It was, at the end, it got a little shitty. It's 48 miles in 2 days. I was tired from running at night. But if you were to take that out, I was like, oh, this is like a model I could get with. Because I could think better all day. Like I said, like when I move, I'm better. So what I've been doing lately is I've been doing a morning workout at lunch, and then a workout after work, but all of those being decently short and like kind of varied. So some of that could just be in the morning, I could just walk for 45 minutes on a treadmill uphill. Okay. But that model seems to be actually really sustainable for me. Do
you think that you like the volume in the long distance because of the endorphin high you get, and then you just want to keep feeding off of that and keep going and going?
It might be. Okay. I haven't done a lot of introspective thought on that, actually. I just know that I like the volume. But it might be, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But for me, too, like I said, like, and there's a lot of studies. Like, I really do actually have ADD, really, like a really gnarly form of ADD, I think. And one of the things with ADD is, like, a stimulant actually helps you focus, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of studies. I read a book called Spark that talks a lot about this. But one of the things with exercise is they're showing that it's very similar to that stimulant where it helps your mind focus, which it's like once I read that, it started putting it all together. And I was like, oh, dude, that's why I do these things. So for me, I think, yes, it's that. But then it's also the fact that, like I said, I just enjoy having that mental clarity. Yeah. And I'm in the military, so I can't take a stimulant like that would be prescribed. So it's kind of been a shit show trying to figure it out.
Gotcha. But you've played around with obviously different supplements before, and so that's how you founded LuaVíve, right? Because the recover component. Yeah, yeah. So do you have a background in chemistry or how did you come about creating that?
I mean, I had to go through a lot of chemistry, like up to like biochem for a medical job I did in the military. Okay. But no, so yes, I have like a basic understanding of chemistry and like at a cellular level, like kind of what's going on with us. But for me, it was actually more of a fact of like, I would get up in the mornings and I think I told this story on the show before. I would get up in the mornings. I was training with OPT, like I said, so I'd be doing CrossFit. Mm-hmm. And then I was an instructor in the military. And so I led all of the runs and swims and PTs. So the volume, again, was just so high that I like started looking for ways I could recover and still be like semi-functional throughout the day after my morning session. And I found that like I started researching what was on the back of a lot of labels. And
I was going to say, most people can't even pronounce, especially me. I think I just
have exactly. But I think I have a sensitive like kind of like gut biome. So okay. I would get bloated or something from these. And I'm like, well, what the hell is in here that's making this feeling?
So you started researching.
Yeah. More. So I started researching and being like, okay, well, in this supplement, maybe it had branched chain aminos, but it also had all of these fillers. And I'm like, okay. So it was just a really long process of seeing what I wanted, what had some like research behind it, and then also getting them all in the same supplement was hard. So sometimes I could like say you'd want protein, right? And it would be ideal that you would eat first. You'd want something with a insulin response so that the protein would have a little bit of a better uptake in your body. Mm-hmm. But then I'd be tired, so then I'd have to drink coffee. And so I was like, man, can there just be one thing? Because this is like, trying to figure all that out every morning gets old. So that was like the basis behind the recovery.
So that's how Lionheart Refuel was created. And then it turned into a business. Yeah. Right? So what was it like starting that business? ups and downs, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I knew I wanted to start a business. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad on deployment, and I just was like, okay, this is the life that I want. Or, get rich or die trying, I guess. But,
Same.
Right. So I knew I wanted a business. I didn't think that was going to be it. I started it, but I started giving it to Pete and a couple other guys at the gym. And then they were like, I remember Pete specifically said, hey, you got more of that? And he was like, you got more of that? And I'm like, I got to the point where I was giving it to so many people at the gym. I was like, you guys got to buy this. This is ridiculous. I'm spending a lot of money keeping you all fed here.
Yeah.
So that was how it started. And then I literally turned my garage into a lab and started pushing subs out of my garage, Breaking Bad style.
And then it came into the creatine coffee, and then it's involved into this Lionheart Radio.
Yep.
So it's got tons of different components of it.
Yep.
So I know there's probably a ton of people listening who want to go down some entrepreneur path. And you've been doing this now for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. What's the one advice you would give somebody or would tell yourself, a couple of years ago?
Oh, damn.
Doesn't have to be the one, I guess. Okay. You can give a couple.
For entrepreneurship specifically?
Yeah, and starting a business.
Yeah. So there are a lot of guides out there that will tell you how to start a business. Mm-hmm. And most of them are more dealing with the legal aspect of how to structure a business and should you have an LLC and go to LegalZoom and do this. And so I focus on that stuff because when you go how to start a business in Google, that's the kind of shit they're going to tell you. What they don't tell you is that all you have at that point is a protected legal expensive hobby. You need to actually have a business. You need to have something that you need to fill a need that people are willing to pay you for. Right.
Yep.
And so that's where I think a lot of these entrepreneurial, how to start a business places miss the mark. Mm-hmm. They're not telling you how to take a product, how to market test it, how to do the research, how to validate it. Because all the legal stuff, it kind of doesn't matter unless you have a fucking, unless you're exchanging money for something that the government cares about. So me personally is from that aspect, it's, hey, just open up another bank account so that you can keep the money separate, because that is important. Mm-hmm. That way you have one that everything you do through that business you can do through that bank account. But other than that, you need to find something that people are willing to pay you for.
Yeah, so it's got to be valuable.
Yeah, you have to fill a need in the market, right? You have to solve a problem for somebody.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah. And I can't stop staring at your mega sunglass tan.
Yes.
Is that from running?
That is from running.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, this has led to a book, right? Has the startup businesses led to your book that's coming out soon, I think? Or do you think it's something you've always wanted to do? Or is it completely separated? Yeah.
Man, so the book has a crazy story behind it in itself. But I started writing it. I've always liked to write. So I started writing it a long time ago. And that's a weird thing in itself, because if you write a book over a period of 5 years, 5 years later, you don't care about the same things you cared about 5 years ago.
Right, you're probably a little bit of a different person.
Yeah, so it's been slowly kind of updating a lot of information. But I wrote the book completely and got it stolen on a computer when our house was broken into.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So I wrote it halfway. I got 20,000 words in, 25,000 words, and threw it all out once. And then wrote it all again, finished it, and then I was dumb at the time, and I didn't back anything up, and it was a while ago, so it wasn't super common to have stuff on Google Drive or whatever like I do now.
Yep.
And my computer got stolen, so I lost the whole book again. So now I'm on the third time, and actually I'm done now, and it's backed up, so no matter what happens, it's
and the
around.
Name of it is?
Burn Your Couch.
Nice.
Yeah.
When does that come out?
I'm going to try to release it in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the main, message or story behind it?
Have you ever heard of Commonplace? Have you ever heard of a Commonplace book?
I haven't.
So a Commonplace book it's essentially, I guess it was bigger in Europe, but it's a thing where it's a book that you would use in order to keep track of things that you found valuable in your life. So quotes that you liked, just concepts or ideas. I've always kept a Commonplace book without knowing what they were called.
Okay.
All right. So this book it's like a commonplace that over the last 10 years of everything I've learned from being in the military and going through some really living in some austere environment, going through some very adverse situations, plus the things that I've always gone through myself, like with sports. And then also starting a business. So you just learn all of these lessons as you like go through life, of course. So this for me is like a commonplace for everything I've learned through this whole last like decade journey, which is kind of cool because I'm getting out of the military. And so I'm kind of like releasing at the same time I'm getting out as like a good like put a bow on that whole section of my life, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're writing a book, or you're almost finished with it. You are running a supplement company, or LuaVíve, which has now grown into a lot more than that. You do have a team that helps you, but you're involved in that too.
Yeah.
You're training for ultramarathons, which take hours and hours to train for. And you are in the military.
That's
right. It's a full-time job.
Yep.
So how do you do that all?
Oh, I just stress out super bad and I don't sleep very often.
So that was my question. Do you not sleep, or how do you fit all that in?
It's kind of a weird thing where I don't sleep, and also I don't function well on low sleep. So I'm in a real catch-22 here. But I don't know. The thing is, I've never been afraid to take on really big projects. And one of the things that I really like about taking on big projects is they force you to level up. If you want to complete them successfully, and I have like a paralyzing fear of failure, and if you want to complete a project successfully, you have to level up in order to do that. So I think that is honestly a lot of it is like not being afraid to take on a big project. It's like you just, by way of the universe, by way of just trying to get this done, you have to acquire all the necessary skills. And that's actually just been really good for me. It's not been like the healthiest, probably the healthiest process, but at the same time, it's gotten me to do some really, really cool things. In high school, I was like the dreamer, right? Like the kid that always had like, oh, now you're going to do this, now you're going to do that. Well, here's the thing. It's like after 10 years of doing that is like, dude, I've literally gotten to see what it's like to run a company, like I know just by doing all these things, you figure out what you like and what you don't like. And so a lot of times it's just a matter of going forward, like I said, and pulling the strings, and, you get some really fucking cool stories.
Yeah. And it almost seems like, you said failure is your biggest fear, but it almost seems like hearing that you're not afraid to fail, that you're just going to keep doing until you succeed. And I'm sure there's been some failures along the way where one person might be like, oh no, I failed, okay, I'm done, I'm going to go back to my cubicle, or back to my safe place. And I feel like where the difference is you're like, okay, I failed, what went wrong, how can I use it, let's keep moving forward, let's keep driving. Which I think is probably the biggest difference. So I don't know if I would say you're afraid to fail. Yeah,
that's probably true. You just have to reframe failure as learning, right? You're just learning what didn't work. I started before LuaVíve, I started a t-shirt company because I wanted an apparel company.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, oh, I'll do a fitness apparel, so I'll just put these fucking logos on t-shirts and say I'm a fitness company. But then I realized I'm in the textile industry, and I hated it, and I had it was a huge failure, technically.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was like I learned how to start a business. I learned what didn't work. I learned, okay, if I'm going to do this again, this is what I need to do differently.
Yep.
And then even with LuaVíve, like I love it. If for whatever reason it didn't work out, dude, I know a whole bunch of shit that's not going to work, and then the next thing's going to be a little bit better.
Gotcha. So the next thing, so you're getting out of the military at the end of this year?
Yeah. December.
Which for most people, that's a big deal. And I know this is no comparison, but I like to compare it as college sports. Like if you played a sport in college, that's your purpose, you're involved, all that. And the day that ends, the first couple weeks, you're like, freedom, I get to party now. I don't have anything mandatory to do. Don't have to train. Yeah, you can do it. All of that.
Yep.
But then it sits in really quickly that, whoa, what is my purpose? I'm getting fat because I don't have that training structure like I used to. And
I don't know if I'm getting fat. I'm just...
No, not yet, right? You still got a couple more months.
Yeah.
But it's a big shock, and I'm sure the military is even bigger than that. So are you thinking about that at all, or have you prepared yourself for that change?
Yeah, I mean, change management is a hard thing in general, and you see, like, I think, if you don't tend emotional things, they're going to manifest themselves physically, and that's like something you know, for me, I've always been like, oh, I'm already 1 foot out anyway. I've got my company and I've got these products and projects and all these things I'm doing.
Yep.
And then every once in a while, I just feel super overwhelmed and it's like kind of bubbles up. So I don't really know how I'm going to handle it yet. Okay. 100%. I mean, I know what like my mission, I think, on this earth is. And so that's the lens that I look at everything through. So the next project I take on, I want it to be even more focused in that mission than the military was. You know, the military served that purpose at one point. Okay. And the reason I'm getting out is I feel like it doesn't serve that purpose anymore for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not growing in the ways that I want to be growing anymore. So I'm simply going to take on a project that I think is going to force, you know, the next evolution of leveling up.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it sounds like you have a plan, which is awesome. And you talked about your mission. What is your mission?
So
can we know?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I want to maximize my capability both physically and cognitively. Okay. I want to be the most evolved version of myself I possibly can be. Mm-hmm. You know, and that requires a lot of that's not just like physically training. That's a lot of like just mental things and kind of exploring things that maybe in the past I would have been not super keen on, like meditation and things like that. Yeah. But I think it's necessary. For me, I really have a strong desire to just tear the mainframe out, right? And like really get to the core of like what I think about things.
Which lines perfectly with why you do ultras, because you get part of that feeling.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. You get that. Like, you definitely tear the mainframe out in 100 miles.
Gotcha. Okay, so what is the next project then? So is it, you know, within LuaVíve? Is it other stuff going on?
I don't know. I do know.
So you're working on it.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not ready to release it yet. I will tell you, it's going to be global. Okay. It's not just U.S. Everything I've done so far in my life has been very U.S.-centric, fucking rah-rah patriot.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like kind of how I am. And this is going to be much different, much bigger. And I'm securing funding right now, and we're a little bit into it, but I'm not ready to release it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we have something to look forward to then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like we've kind of captured all aspects of your life and all the different things you've done and things you're doing now. What would you say your philosophy on life is? You know, if you look at your life, you know, you've kind of said what you want to, your mission, but what's your philosophy on life? You know, your everyday.
So I've kind of talked in circles a little bit, which I'll tend to do if I speak for long enough. But I think, you know, going back to, you know, and this is the first time I've done an interview like this. It's so open forum. But I think that everything I've done is predicated on movement. Every company I've owned, everything like, whether it's, you know, lifting or running or triathlons or, you know, even with the business, it's like everything is always like predicated on movement. And I think a lot of people, I talk to people in my hometown, like family members, and it kind of breaks my heart when I talk to people and they feel like they're in a rut. Mm-hmm. Like, but it's an easy thing in life, right? You just go through the 9 to 5 motions. You're on the hamster wheel. It's easy to feel like you're in a rut and like things, like, I don't know, like you're not fulfilled, right? And you're just kind of going through the motions every day. What's your purpose? Like, what's your purpose, right? Mm-hmm. We all get faced with that. I think that's a very esoteric and very like grandiose notion to solve. That's a hard thing to answer for yourself. But what's not hard is taking a step forward. Like, this is why I'm big on like doing bucket list stuff, right? It's like, just what do you think you like? Just go do that. Just move forward. Just go forward. That's all you gotta do. Because what's gonna happen is when you start doing these things, you know, you realize what aligns with you, like what resonates with you, and then you go further down that path, and then you let go of some of the other things that don't. Mm-hmm. Instead of those being like I could have, like, man, I probably could have been a pro whatever if I would have just, you know what I mean? Instead of having those thoughts, it's like, no, I've gone down every fucking path. Like, I know I don't want to do that. I thought for sure growing up I wanted to be a rock star. You know what I mean? Okay. I played in a band in Virginia Beach, and we played like a couple sold out shows, and we had a song on the local radio station. Oh, wow. And we recorded a CD, and people are like, you're in a fucking band now, dude? And I'm like, yeah, it's like, I love it, you know? And we played in other countries. Like, it was a blast. Mm-hmm. And at the end, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. This isn't a life I don't really like the people in this industry. But I know that, right? It wasn't like that. you don't have to like let these things go just because you grow up. You just have to like experiment with them. You know, I call it the like low risk probe. What's like the lowest risk of something you can get away with and try? Do that. Like maybe you want to run a marathon. Well, just try a 5K. That's a low risk probe. It doesn't take much effort. It doesn't take much investment. If you hate it, you probably aren't going to want to keep running a marathon. Yeah. You know, but if there's something there that you liked, okay, well then there's a 10K or there's a half or whatever. So just mastering that like lowest risk, lowest financial investment, time investment, but just like moving forward and trying these things is hugely beneficial. And
I think we hear that kind of on the people that you interview. So it's almost like you interview people that are into movement, right? You interview people that are into mindset. You interview entrepreneurs who've created something that moved forward. And so that's kind of what we see on the guests that are on Lionheart Radio. Do you have a direction in mind where you're going to take Lionheart Radio, or is that kind of the theme that you're going to stick with?
Yeah, we've gone back and forth a lot, like all the people behind the scenes, and I don't know if me and you have talked about it, but I worry about that because a lot of podcasts do really well when they're very niche. Yep. So it's like, I know if I want to lift, Iron Radio is the podcast I go to. I know for CrossFit, Barbell Shrugged is a podcast I go to. For me, right, as we've talked, you've seen like I'm just into all of these different things, and so it's super hard for me to put, I know if I do put a niche on something, a month down the road it's going to be something else and we're just going to go away. But for us, like I really like to think of LuaVíve as this movement, you know, predicated on movement, if you will. So I think that with Lionheart Radio, we want to keep just showcasing people that are out there, you know. And the thing is, when you hear an interview with these people that are doing crazy things, at least for me, it makes it a little bit more attainable, you know. And even if you don't want to do those crazy things, there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from them. So I like being able to bring that to people.
Yeah, and I think it's cool that you have, obviously you have really, you know, well-known people on there who are podium and things like that. But you also have kind of the next couple layers down, which is cool because, like you said, it kind of makes you think, hey, anybody can do this. You could be that person. You just got to go for it. Right. Kind of like you've said.
Yeah, like, I mean, just yesterday, we haven't aired it yet, but we interviewed this guy named Len Forkas, who his son got diagnosed with leukemia at 10 years old. And to raise money for this cause that he wanted, and we'll get into it in the interview, but he did the race across America. It's a 3,089-mile bike race in 12 days.
Yeah, that's going to be super motivating.
Yeah, 57 years old. Like, this is a just guy going through his life who had the inclination to do something extraordinary because he had a purpose that was, like, bigger than himself, and he did it. But it wasn't easy. He, like, goes through all of these hard times and talks about how miserable it was. And how awful and hard it was and how worth it was, you know?
Nice. Yeah. So I feel like you probably already answered this, but you're not getting out of the Lionheart kicker. So I'm going to butcher this, but...
Okay. I was like, man, is she going to ask me the kicker?
Oh, yeah, it's here. If you could give the world one advice and every single person would be guaranteed to hear it, it would be translated into every language, even sign language. Okay. Everyone may not listen to it, but they would hear it. What would you tell them?
You know, Mike Bledsoe, he had the best answer for this. He said, pay Mike Bledsoe $1.
You can't copy.
So I would say, pay me $1.
You cannot copy somebody else's answer.
Say I'm going to be a millionaire. No, I think, man, I thought about this a lot. Generally, people tend to only do things that they would consider in their swim lane. Right? So that what would be normal for them. And that is just dictated by however they grew up. So if you grew up and your mom was an Olympian, being an Olympian is something you think is possible, right? Because you've fucking seen it and you know it and you're brought up that way. If you grew up and your parents never went to college and they were blue-collar workers in your hometown, which was my case, then that's what you feel like is your... I guess fate or whatever, right? And then, you know, basically like you think about what's possible for you and that defines what's normal for you. Yep. But my advice to people would be to stop feeling like they need to ask permission to live their best life, right? To go after these things that they want to do. You might get, you know, balls deep in said endeavor and decide that you don't like it. And that's okay too. You know what I mean? You're going to find out what you do and you don't like. But you don't need permission from people to start a business. Like, I've never known a business owner growing up. I just knew it was something I wanted. And luckily, you know, I had that inclination to like kind of say fuck it. I've always had this like kind of deep-seated rebel inside of me, but it served me well in a lot of different ways. So my advice to people would be quit feeling like you need to ask permission to do the things you want to do in life. Just go fucking do them.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And it probably goes along with, too, you probably don't care what other people think, right? If you're going to do something out of your box, if you tell your mom, I'm going to go own a business, she might try to be like, no, you're not. You can't do it. Or, you know, something. Maybe your mom's not like that. Not to, I don't know. Just giving an example, you know, that people are going to put you down, but it seems like, you know, you tell them, like, I don't need permission for you, from you. I can do this.
Yeah, and you know, that family pressure is a hard one for a lot of people to get over. For whatever reason, I've just never felt that to a very strong, compelling degree where I would actually change. You know, my mom, like I said this on one of the episodes, my mom was like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, not getting out of the military and starting a new podcast. You know, because I'm like, fuck. But yeah, that, you know, people, they're going to tell you what they think is safe because they want the best for you.
Right.
You know.
Right.
That's a hard thing for people to get past sometimes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on, or thanks for you
I appreciate
coming
it.
on.
No, I think this is good. I'm really excited for, you know, people, especially the listeners that have been listening to us for a while now, maybe to learn a little bit more background on the person that hosts most of the interviews.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea, and then they can get a little better idea of maybe who's, you know, what type of people are going to be coming on based on your interests, and maybe learn something too from this.
Yeah.
Don't fucking ask permission, just go for it.
Yeah, for sure.
I like it. All right, thank you very much.
Sweet. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track and delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcome. If you have any comments on the show or like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@LuaVíve.com. That's LuaVive.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshit. So you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland.